one and all, to tonight's Midnight Ranting. Did Jesus exist? Dun dun dun. Where we are putting the mythos in the hot seat and having a theological good time. We are
Thanks, guys.
Midnight Ranting. I do want to thank everyone out there on their intertubes. I don't know how they fit it through there. In fact, if you've recently gotten your booster or vaccine, now is your time to activate your 5G chip. Bloop.
For the New World Order?
Bloop. Exactly, for the New World Order. Not the old World Order. That would be boring. Everyone wants to jump on the New World Order.
Well, what would be after that? The newer
World Order. It would be new, but it would be with a U. So it'd be just new.
Fuck us.
Once again, it's all about the marketing. But yes, please, if you're feeling fancy, remember to like, follow, or subscribe. Ding, ding, ding. And then it gets you access to that all button icon so that you can see our premieres or join our live streams. Hi, interwebs. Oh, God. I'm getting caught in the internet. Caught in the But yes, we are.
You're now part of the internet.
James, because we're 5G chip, do you know what that means? We may
going to hell?
That too, but we may be part of the Internet of Things. I feel
that too. Well, that too.
So connected right now. But yes, we are a schmuck channel. We are a skeptic channel. That too, including the two schmucks you see before you. But after we give our opening statements, we will be opening the floodgates, or rather, the open mic, so you can say what's on your mind about the subject. And of course, we will allow anyone, whether you're atheist or theist, liberal or conservative,
mythicist or historicist,
as you are, that's right. Just not on my sheets. Oh, God. It's a feisty position. You can have, doesn't matter whether you're an atheist or non-believer. I feel like
no
views on the subject. And so
definitely
we would also like to give a shout out to our Patreons who help us out at patreon.com/Amy Newman, who allow us to create awesome content like Oz from the Indians Round. Woohoo! As well as setting up awesome
go gadget vaccines
at tart.live.
Oh yeah.
And also, as we level up in the non-believer community, sending love to Ian Davenport.
Thank you, Ian.
Sending love, Ian, and kind of making us throw away intelligent design arguments, because a watch looks like a watch, and that looks like a heart. But also, when we listen to those,
never seen a good one.
I know, I've never seen a good argument for intelligent design.
Never.
But nonetheless, these types of arguments make a grumpy old cuss, make us go bleep, 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 bleep.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, they're just kind of silly, but apologetics have to be created because no one else would believe that someone came back from the dead. Nonetheless, we're sending love to 3 princesses in 1. Woo!
Thank you, Diana Smith. 500 people saw it, Newman.
I know.
We touched on that tonight.
That's right, 500 people. Did you go? Did you interview all of them? Really? You went there? That's very... I would like to see a documentary on that. Oh, yeah, no, I totally. And then the other guy, well, it wasn't really amazing. And then the third guy is like, there was a resurrection? Were you there? Was I there?
That's like somebody saying, I want to have a trial. I want to call 500 witnesses for my case.
In fact, there are 500 people that I have picked at random from my congregation. But who knows who these mystery people are?
Is this a cult? Are you guys held here by force? Is this a cult?
Yeah. Well, you better not use the C word. They're very picky with the C word. Though, from a perspective, non-believing in the Christian worldview, it does look a little culty. But
stripper liquor. Is Amy a cult leader? Is this a cult?
Oh, my. Only if it's a sex cult, baby.
Well.
And only if those are non-taxable. But yes, sending love to not only Diana Smith, who turns out women are humans? Humans!
Where would you read that?
But also, looking back, you wouldn't find that in the good book. We're talking about, it's good news, right? Everything's got to be good. You got to have, once again...
Yeah, you wouldn't find blasphemy like that in there.
But you wouldn't be passing around the bad book, just like it wouldn't be the old world order. It's always about marketing. You're not bringing bad news. Who wants bad news? I mean, the hell is in there, but it's not like you're leading with hell.
But I mean, Amy, okay, so the God of the universe, right? He picked one group of people, and it's us. We're his chosen people. Whoa.
James, that's what I like about being chosen, is that you can tell everyone else to go F themselves. Though I would say, if you're ever chosen by a God, run. I know you feel special. I know it feels great now. But if we just looked on like the scoreboard of who lives and who dies, it's just not great. Like, whoo, you get a great tombstone. But no, it's great.
Yeah.
But we are sending love. I mean, it's kind of on topic about historicity.
Absolutely.
Sending love to our resident archaeologist, who you can find right now at youtube.com/BiddyBuddha. But we are sending love to Pat Lowinger.
Thank you, Pat.
Who has done many awesome episodes of Talk Skeptic to us, like looking up the historicity of sacredness, which was fantastic, as well as getting his friends to look at absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Good episode. But also sending love, too. Yeah. We were kind of just looking for a little bit of empirical evidence. It's hard, especially when we're dealing with claims that are...
evidence that Jesus existed.
But Dale Pastel and the rest of the skeptic community, as always, we're kind of just looking for a little bit of empirical evidence.
He existed. We should be able to find some evidence. What do you think? I don't know.
You would think so. And we're also sending love to, because the internet tends to make this a thing. Is this a thing? It's not. But we're sending love to Dave Garr because...
oh, yeah.
The earth kind of looks a little juicy, kind of looks a little thick. Maybe I'm a little biased, but you never know. We're also sending love to the lead hyena of the pack, because sometimes creationists, they kind of like to remind people that, animals are in their dominion, when actually, no. They were not just poofed into existence for us. So
you claim, Newman. So you claim.
Or so you claim. Would have us believe. But yes, also sending love to our skeptic Bible study theologian Skull, A theologian skull? He wasn't. The skull was a theologian, probably.
That dude, that Regos dude.
Regos, sending love to Regos, who,
thank you, Regos.
You know, every once in a while the Bible gets very thespian, very Shakespearean. Thou shalt drown everyone on the planet. Okay, that escalated quickly, but thank you, Yahweh. Thank you, jealous. And
last but certainly not least.
Last but certainly not least, we're sending love to Rachel Holland. Woo!
She's always misplacing that whip.
Dude, oh, I'm not sure that was ever the wrong place, James. Sometimes you just gotta put it. Anything's a dildo if you're brave enough. What we were speaking of also is that the Bible would never endorse biblical slavery. That's what I like about books like the Bible and just the Abrahamic faiths in general, is they would never endorse something that, I don't know, people would disagree with. Hundreds, maybe 1,000.
Biblically speaking, your definition of slavery cannot defeat my biblical Christological apple pie God.
That sounds good to me. I would like a slice. But we would actually like to send love to all of our Patreons.
I didn't make it, soldier. I didn't make it this time.
Maybe next time. Mods, the people in chat, and of course,
we love you guys.
Viewers like you. And all right, we are going to do our opening statements and then quickly jump into the open mic. However, if you have
y'all in trouble now,
a burning desire, question, or a one-liner, a reminder to tag James W. and myself in chat at Amy Newman.
We're watching.
But before we go into our open,
our Newman mic.
Did Jesus exist? I don't know. Paul, the man who wrote much of the New Testament, claims to have met Jesus 50 years after his death. Impressive. An act I would like to see in Vegas next to David Blaine, with a time period much like One of Us, predicting the future events of Elvis Presley. However, the historical concept of Jesus may not be as simple as liar, lunatic, or Lord, but rather legend. After all, Jesus wasn't the only mythos, starting with a virgin birth, a martyrdom for his people, and a supposed resurrection. Thus, separating out fact from fiction, especially from religious narratives, is never easy. With many of the books of the Bible being hobcobbled together, voted on via committee, and put into practice hundreds of years after this first century rabbi had supposedly lived. So, did Jesus exist? I'm not sure. However, what seems probable is an amalgamation of mythologies that got strung together, along with some religious traditions, old and new, smushed together into a single religion. One of which there is still no good evidence to think is true. Thank you. And all right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to James.
Biblically speaking,
I'm taking you. Take us back to the first century. What are your thoughts?
right? And that's quite appropriate, right? Biblically speaking, because that really is the bulk of the evidence that we have for Jesus existing is the Bible accounts in the Gospels. And now I'm sure all of our viewers know that those were written by anonymous authors. We don't really know who wrote them. They were written decades after the fact, and they're full of all sorts of contradictions. The Bible is full of problems, and it really doesn't echo the type of thing that you want to take on faith alone. Anyhow, this was a really good debate, and it was more of a two academics going up and at it, so I think a lot of it might have went over some people's heads if you're not too familiar with this issue. It wasn't kind of a street brawl, it was kind of more of a academic joust, but needless to say, I think Dr. Carrier did very well. I think he really just shows such a wealth of knowledge on this. To really understand the issue, you kind of need to have read his book. It's 1,000 pages long. It's been a few years, but it was a really good read. I think you can get it on Kindle for like 20 bucks. But yeah, he really goes in depth into what he thinks is going on here. And even he leaves open there is a possibility that Jesus could have been a real person, a real figure. That's a possibility, but there's also a possibility he could not be. You know, we're not saying for sure, but it's an interesting question to debate. But we don't really have nearly as much evidence as the historicity side would lead us to believe, as if it's something that's obvious. And it's really not. We have the gospel accounts. We have a few other references, like the one from Josephus. A lot of them are highly suspect. We have spurious writings, people we don't know who wrote it. We don't know why they wrote it. We don't know their motivations. We have books of Paul that are almost certainly forgeries, like Dr. Carrier pointed out today, the book of Acts. There's others that have been pointed out before, are at least whole or in part not the writings of Paul. And yeah, so that's where we're at. I think it's a really interesting question. I tend to lean on the side I don't think Jesus existed. I think that what Pat has said before, and it's a distinct possibility that what could have happened is you could have taken myths or stories, legends of several different people and kind of just molded them all together and to this story that, the book of Mark was written about. And we know that Mark was the first gospel. We know that all the other gospels basically copied that. And they tried to put their own spin on it. They tried to put their own narrative on Jesus. And you see that in the evolution of the gospels. The claims get different. In some cases, they get more grandiose. You see retellings of the same story, but with a slightly different angle put on it, or with new details that author wanted to emphasize. And then you just see blatant additions, things that were added decades or possibly centuries later to make the story more coherent, or just to make it a better story, like the account where Jesus gets the best of the Pharisees with the adulteress they thought they tricked him, but he tricked them. So anyway, let's see what people have to say. Let's get some people in here, guys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much, James.
Yeah, let's go.
And that's right. With that, I'm going to be sending the link into chat so that we can go into our open mic mode. I thought it was a great debate as well. And like you were saying, it was very academic, very cordially, which is what you'd expect from two doctors, which is so surprising. You would think that every debate with Dr. Kent Hovind then would go just as smoothly from an academic, biblically
you would
speaking.
think.
And from a but we are sending that link into stream, and we are asking the question. We are midnight ranting on did Jesus exist? I am kind of in between. I know where I definitely feel on whether the mythologies are true. There are definite trappings of mythology. Like, I do not understand a virgin birth from anything but a mythological perspective. And so, I think
it was a common theme going around at the time of virgin birth. That was a.
Ooh. Damn it, James got summoned by Satan. Though I'm already seeing some people joining backstage, so we're about to switch into the open mic.
I'm here.
Oh, and he's back. Thank you, Satan, for giving him back to us.
Not today, Satan.
Not today, Satan. Maybe tomorrow, though. Always possible.
We'll check with Pastor Bob on that. See if he's got an opening tomorrow.
Speaking of which, more lovely people, just have to send two shout-outs before we go into the open mic.
Go ahead.
I'll do something sad and something happy. So I do have to send a love to someone definitely roasting in hell right now and roasting in all of our hearts, which is Bob Saget. I have to send a freaking love out there into the universe. Was an amazing man. Knew how to both master the clean comedy, whether you love Full House, but also was just a raunchy comedian and an amazing man. So once again, sending love out to Bob Saget.
Send it to Saget.
And then sending love to all of you guys out there who pushed us up to 900. And so we are just sending celebration. Ooh. It wouldn't have been even possible without you guys. We have a whole bunch of material and fun content that we are about to get out there, including some new shows and the March to 1,000, so we can get a whole bunch of fun
March to 1,000
and all sorts of other fun stuff on there. So we want to thank you so very much. And with that, we already got two people, so we're going to be doing openers till we can get into the open conversation. We are Midnight Ranting on Did Jesus Exist? The link will now be pinned because we are moving into the open mic. What is up, Soldier of Science? I hope you're doing well. And of course, we are talking about Did Jesus Exist? Both the debate itself with Dr. Richard Carrier and the topic at hand.
Well, thank you both. You know what? It was an awesome debate, to be honest with you. I always learned something from Dr. Carrier, and this is the first time I saw Dr. Boyce. And both of them carried themselves well. They didn't, they didn't shout each other down or, use ad hom attacks in debate at all. So that was like a nice change of pace to see that. It's really interesting argument for me as an atheist. I'll be honest, James, I still kind of lean towards I think Jesus probably existed side. I still lean that way, and maybe I lean that way just because I was born a Christian. I don't know, and so maybe there's, so maybe there's a bias there that if you have a certain amount of people that wrote about him, that maybe he was an actual character that existed. But I'll be honest with you, for me, really focusing in on the debate,
just tease.
For me, the most interesting part is both of them, even Carrier, recognizes that, Paul really did have this change of heart, right? Like he was a person who, um, you know, criticized the Christians and condemned Christians and went after Christians, but then had this change of heart. So to me, that was probably the most interesting part of the argument is, I would love to know what did that to him. I mean, obviously, he says it was,
This vision that he had.
a vision he had, but was that, for me, I'm thinking, was that a dream he had? Was that a hallucination, or was it he's just been around Christians so long that he decided this is a scam? So like all those three things come up in my mind when I think about that. But for me, that was probably the crux of the argument, and probably not for Carrier at all. But for me, it was because I'm like, you know what? That's really interesting. I mean, this guy didn't have to, if he was powerful enough to even be sent to Damascus in the first place, he had connections. He was obviously probably doing well, being someone who was against Christians. Why would this guy change his mind? And I kind of left that debate with that thought on my mind. What do you guys think?
I think see, a lot of Paul's writings actually came out before the Gospels, so we're even in circulation. So it's hard to know what type of experience that he had. There are theories about there that he had hallucinations, that he was just crazy. He was just a basket case. I don't know. That is a good question.
I mean, that's the interesting point for me. And with that said, even if I do lean towards that, I think Jesus was a real character. Obviously, as an atheist, I don't believe in the resurrection story. I don't believe the Gospels even give kind of any merit, or that argument to me is all bunk. It's so after the fact, and it's obviously copies of each other. The Gospels do nothing for me. I just, after watching that debate, that one point was, I kind of went like, that's really interesting. Like, why?
And the other thing I'll say, and then we'll add in Flum, and then go into the open conversation.
Go for it, Amy.
But I always find it weird, like the perfect thing. When you're telling me that someone's perfect, that also is a dude that just did not exist. There is no man or woman out there that is perfect. So
only if you could be God.
Exactly. And so these sorts of claims, if you were to dissect them down to, there was just a dude named Yeshua, and he lived a life, sometimes good, sometimes bad. He died, stayed dead, and then eventually people got inspired by him. It would not be very exciting.
Right. No, and Carrier doesn't even go in, or he didn't go into it tonight, but there is a lot more things that he mentions in his book and previous debates about, like, even just names of people that existed in Jesus's time were like not real people's names. They were names for things that happened rather, and so it kind of leads to the mythicism of Jesus. I'm trying to think of, was it like Babar, or who was one of the people named, and who was the other prisoner?
Barabbas.
Barabbas, yeah. Like Carrier goes into the fact that Barabbas wasn't even an actual real name. It actually meant something else during that time. And so that was one of his, his
There's lots of clues in the Gospel.
Exactly. So, okay, that was my opening, Amy. You guys go for it.
I would just say real quick,
absolutely,
as a theory, I think maybe Paul just had a shred of humanity, and maybe he actually was won over by the early Christians that he was persecuting, and maybe he
felt guilty about persecuting.
He felt bad about persecuting people just for their religious beliefs, and maybe their conviction of sticking to their beliefs in the face of persecution won him over. Yeah. That is a possibility. And then maybe he had a dream about Jesus. I mean, it's just conjecture. We don't know, but it's interesting.
That's kind of what I'm leaning towards too, is like, I mean, I think before tonight's debate, I didn't know enough about Paul, and I honestly thought that maybe he might be the first scam evangelist. He might be the first modern, I'm going to make some money off this. Like I see there's a lot of people who believe in this, and if I change my, but I don't. After tonight, I don't think that anymore. I'm kind of leaning towards what you just said, like. You know what? Maybe he was around Christians enough. He had a dream and realized that, like, hey, if I don't believe this too, maybe I am going to go to a place called hell. Maybe that's the case.
So why am I persecuting these people just because they have a different belief system? That's stupid,
Yeah.
And or maybe use those examples all the time. They use basically the fact that he was a someone who went after them and then converted, just like how they use, well, he was an atheist, but before they converted, they kind of use that as evidence that their conversion actually happened. Or
no, absolutely. Most Christians do. I have a good friend. We were roommates at one time. He's an anarchist, and which I kind of laugh about because he believes in heaven, and I'm like, how can you be an anarchist and you believe in heaven? Like, if you go there, there's no anarchy in heaven. but that's
he's going to heaven to cause anarchy.
But that's besides the point. The point I'm making is, if I can track him down to his best argument of why, because he doesn't believe, he believes in evolution, he doesn't believe the flood story myth,
right?
But he does believe in the resurrection story, and I find that most Christians who are still Christians, but have been able to shape the modern world into their Christianity. That's what it comes down to mostly for them.
That's the one thing they can't compromise on, is the resurrection. Because if you compromise on that, the whole thing falls apart.
Exactly.
You can give up on evolution, the flood, creation. You can give up on Moses being a myth, whatever. But when you get to the big G, man, the big Jesus, that's where
then he's just a dude.
It gets real. Right. That's where it gets real. And if he is just a dude, then what are we doing here?
Exactly. So, I mean, go ahead, Amy.
Oh, no, I was going to say, make your final point, Soldier.
No, that's it.
Then thank you so very much. It was wonderful having on here. Stick around. We'll be going into open conversation in a second. But thank you, Soldier of Science. And all right. Flung, what is up? We are Midnight Ranting on Did Jesus Exist? I hope you're doing well, and what are your thoughts on the debate, the topic, or anything we've been talking about tonight?
Well, the Jesus story is like 5 different guys wandering around the desert. You have them in Jerusalem, you have them in Galilee. They're all over the place. It's not the same guy. So you have a problem. What do? You smash them together and you make one story. So that's the Jesus story. So they took all these different stories from Galilee and from Judea and from Jerusalem and put them together. Fits nicely. Or maybe not.
Yeah, could be. All smushed together.
That's my theory. I know most people say it's bunk, but
No, that's kind of what Pat says when he thinks that there's various myths that they combine together into one narrative, and whether you call, I would still call that a mythicist position, because
I
there's
do. I
not no
do.
one Jesus.
Yeah, it's real people they're talking about, but it's not one person.
It's many people, like an amalgamation.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of what I lean towards. I'm kind of in between. Either that it was multiple people, multiple leaders, that it was a mix of different myths from something else that kind of got piled together, or at the very least that none of the actual miracles or the things that make him anything special actually happen. And so I'm skeptical all the way down, except to the point of Moses, because that Moses is my line. Like, those people I know didn't exist. Moses, Noah, blah 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 blah. But I could kind of see
Abraham, yeah. No
Yeah.
Abraham, no Adam and Eve.
Well, and I
And
think
maybe no King David either, right?
That's possibly no.
Yeah.
David is pretty certain.
Oh yeah, and David
he's
is
also pretty, but we let that go.
But we have some evidence that he existed. Actually, I think around the same kind that we have for Jesus. I think it's around the same level. Except for David, we have archaeological evidence. They
really.
dug in the ground and they found
They found something that said the name David.
not really, but they found something around where he was supposed to be.
I'm
Yeah,
looking this up as we speak.
At the time, he was supposed to be around, I think, 870 BC or something. They found some stables, and I'm not big on archaeology.
Eh,
You have to get your special people on that.
oh baby, get him, Amy.
Oh, well, then we're going to have to get Pat on here.
Says the archaeological evidence for King David's existence is limited and much of it's controversial. Perhaps the most
that's what I said. It was some
perhaps the
stables
most
and some
important
shit.
piece of evidence linked to King David is known as the Tel Dan Stele, which is an
a
ancient
tell
and
is a
broken
mountain or a
stone.
hill.
Yeah.
That's where they dug it up at the
Yep.
Till Dam. Yeah.
So not much.
No, not much, but still better than Jesus.
Well, I mean, everything is better than Jesus. I mean,
Have you ever seen a coin or a statue from, let's just say, the first 200 years with Jesus on it?
Yeah.
No, nothing. Okay.
All right. You can't say that we cannot perform prophecy, because the one, the only Pat Lowinger.
What's
hey,
up, Pat?
What is up, Pat? Well, we are talking. In fact, some would say we're even midnight ranting on did Jesus exist? Sending love out there. And all right, guys, we're going to go into the open conversation, but let's keep on talking, because I don't know. It looks a little bit more like a mythos to me.
Yeah,
we're denying it.
I don't know, and I don't even think it's important, to be honest with you, because if Jesus did exist, even as an apocalyptic preacher, you know, who cares? Like, again, the resurrection is the important thing. If he was someone that was historical, fine. You know, there's a bunch of people in the world right now who have a bunch of followers, and you know, maybe after they die, they're going to be gods. You know, there's a Russian Jesus, right? Didn't that guy have like over 1 million followers? Or Santi Sai Baba, he had millions of followers, right?
No, I don't.
You don't know who Santi Sai Baba?
No.
You've never heard of that guy?
No.
Oh man, he is. I don't know if he's out of India, but he had millions of followers and would create little miracles.
Hundreds of millions of followers.
Yeah, one of the most popular modern day. Created all kinds of miracles. You know, come up with trinkets. They were
In a
always
lab,
small
of
trinkets.
course.
No. They were like
I'm
it was like a magician tricks. You know, where he was basically, you know, like a magician pulls a coin out of your ear. It's pretty much similar. He would like come up with all these little trinkets in his hand and give it to someone. But even more, I think he's even been credited with resurrecting people, supposedly. But yeah, there's tons of religious people who have millions of followers, and after they die, sure, 100 years from now, someone's gonna say they were really the god, you know. And that could have been the same for a true Jesus or a historical Jesus. So for me, it doesn't even matter if Jesus was a real person. For me, it's was this real person actually dead for 3 days and then came back to life? I don't care if Jesus was real, to be honest.
The other thing, I completely agree in that the important part is whether the miracles were true. Are we just talking about a John Smith? Or are we talking about someone who is communicating with the creator of the universe? The other thing I find, they never take into, like, 3 days of dying into context is a lot of dying. I mean, that's a lot of decomposure.
That's some decay right there.
It's not like just a Band-Aid or he just died like an hour ago. We're like, oh my God, he just stopped breathing.
You're definitely going to look like a zombie after 3 days.
And they hate that word. They hate the Z word. And yet, I have to say, according to most zombie rules, I feel like 3 days of death is plenty of time to become a zombie.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? You know, to me, I never really thought about this. But I guess even as a Christian, whenever I thought about resurrection, I didn't think of it as a physical body. I thought it was like, you know, maybe he's like an angel now, you know, where he looks like he's physical, but really he's just kind of like in this ethereal, spiritual form, you know. I never pictured him
like a ghost.
Yeah, like a ghost. I never really thought about it as like it's his physical body that resurrected.
See, but that's cheap. I will say, like I completely understand that apologetic, but it's just funny how like living very empirical, but once they claim he comes back to the dead, it's like, well, empiricism. I mean, who really needs empiricism?
Yeah, and you know, again, as a Christian, I thought the resurrection story, like every Christian did, is what kept me being a Christian. But now as an atheist, I'm like, well, if it was an all-knowing God that did this in the first place, what the freak is the freaking point in the first place? Like,
oh, I don't get any of it.
You know, like now I'm just way above that. I'm like, the resurrection story doesn't even make sense at all. Zero. Because if you're omniscient,
the whole thing doesn't make sense.
It makes zero sense if you're an all-knowing God that killed off the world one time with Noah and a flood, and was like somehow thought that they were going to repopulate the earth with a bunch of people that were perfect, and he wouldn't have to send himself, aka his son, to then forgive your sins.
it makes sense from a mythos standpoint. Literally, that is the only lens that I can grasp it from, because you need to have a death and then kind of a resurrection moment right before the end of the story. But
I don't even get that,
accept
though.
The story makes a lot of sense in the context of telling a story.
Yes, so it makes a lot of sense in that, like, in a good story,
a blood sacrifice makes no sense.
No. Okay, not a blood sacrifice. So here, let me separate two things out.
Okay,
there is mythological structure in which, in my opinion, it's the story of the telling of the leaving the cave, not the algorithm, or not the thought experiment of the shadows, but the actual person leaving the cave, going from their old world into something new, going through a different tests and tales.
Sure.
Being given a guide, a kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi type of person, so that you can learn how to go through these structures. Generally, you have a death moment that is either a false victory or a false defeat, where
a trial and tribulation,
where you think that all is lost, or everything's happy. It's too happy. And that's generally what takes you into the third act, which is where you can combine both worlds, take the magic back home, which is generally the fire, once again, to the algorithm of the cave, or the story of the cave, and share. Now you both have the wisdom of the new world, and you have taken it back, and you can understand the wisdom of the old world and tie it all together. It only makes sense in mythic structure. When you take it away from this, it becomes literal craziness, because yes, how can an all-seeing, all-knowing, why is he doing any of this? Why does he have a child? The fact that a god has a child would be really weird if you took it out of, in my framework, the same that superheroes, out of a Marvel framework or anything else.
But if you look at the sacrifice was a common theme throughout all religions in the region at the time, and actually I think my personal view on it is that the gospel writers who in early Christianity who came up with this idea of Jesus being a once and for all sacrifice, I think they just got tired of and realized it was stupid to keep on killing animals so that God won't be mad at you. So to get a loophole around that, they just came up with the idea, okay, we've got this Jesus, he's perfect. We'll kill him once and for all, and because he's perfect and he's also God and he's also the Son of God, thus being his own Father and his own Son, therefore we won't have to keep killing animals for no reason. That's just my personal opinion on that.
I kind of lean towards that thought as well, as like, I mean, you look at the Aztecs, you look at the Incas, and in some populations they even killed, people, right? They even sacrifice virgins.
The Jews also
sacrifice
killed
babies
lots of people. They really like killing people.
Well, the gods really like sacrifices. Yeah, this whole stick with kill people for me, because you're my chosen people, and you
he really liked that. He really liked that. Have you read the Old Testament?
Well,
the Ammonites,
yeah, it was almost kind of like the world civilization was stuck in a blood sacrifice ritual with all their religions, and someone finally was like, you got to put a stop to this, even if we make up some shit.
And I do want to just
I think that's what
comment.
A lot of the New Testament was, but go ahead, Amy.
It says, I don't think it's important either whether the historicity of Jesus. What is important is the movement, which became known as Christianity, and the history associated with the movement in the 4th century CE, which is what we're really dealing with, which is Christianity. And it would knock the whole
yeah.
thing down. I mean, if clearly
that's
Jesus
what I mean.
didn't exist, then there is no Christianity.
And that's the thing for me is that I think all of us, none of us believe that he rose from the dead, he was God and God's son and all that. But try convincing, your average Christian of that, they're going to take issue with it. But if you could show that he never existed, then that precludes the whole thing. It's all the whole rotten house of cards comes tumbling down. But then again, it probably would be really hard for them to accept that,
But James, I think that wouldn't even convince half the Christians, even if they could prove that Jesus
they would just
didn't
obstinately believe that he believed, just like they obstinately believe in creationism or the global flood. They would just refuse to accept reality as they do.
You wouldn't stop Christianity that
You
way.
wouldn't, but you might convince some. You might. There might be.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, James. That if that argument succeeded in showing that Jesus didn't actually, really exist as a physical person, then I mean, how can you refute that? I mean, you can't then be a Christian and say that there was a person that died for my sins. So, but
I don't know.
I think it's impossible for a Christian to get there. Well, I mean, I got there, but it's impossible for most Christians to get to that point. And probably the same reason why I still lean towards Jesus was probably a real person, just not a god. I've listened to Carrier a lot, and he makes great arguments, but we all acknowledge he's in the minority of historians.
Well, sure.
Yeah, he's in the minority, and that doesn't mean he's wrong, because his arguments are stronger than a lot of modern historians.
I see all the momentum going towards the mythicist position. Like the majority of scholarship probably still is with the historical side, but the shifting is all going away from that towards the mythicist side. Whether or not we'll ever get to a majority, I don't know.
Right.
That's where it's moving.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah,
but I think it's like with Abraham and Moses, and now I grew up in the 80s.
Me too.
And it was established fact that at least Abraham went out from the city of Ur. We found the city of Ur, so Abraham must have gone out from that. But now we know there was no Abraham. There was no Moses. There was no...
Yeah, no.
Like,
I mean,
no,
most
Joseph,
of the people in the Old Testament, in the Torah.
What's kind of ironic is you'll find a lot of modern atheists are actually culturally Jewish people. So
they are. I think it's mostly that most Jews are more modern atheists.
That's what I should say.
The other way around.
That way, yeah, other way around.
Also, talk about the fact that there was no Adam and Eve, and so there really was no point for Jesus to die. We know historically there was no literal Adam and Eve, and so there was no. I would say
there was no snake, no talking snake.
Historically speaking,
there was no beginning of the story. So why would you end the story?
Yeah.
So there was no reason really for the actual mythos to be literal.
Well, I've heard Catholic apologists and they accept that they're saying it's metaphorical, the story of Adam and Eve, but what exactly the metaphor is and what it represents, we don't know for sure. But the story's just trying to tell us that something went wrong. Like God had this perfect plan.
You what it represents.
Well, maybe
it's
you can, but I'm talking about what Catholic theology would say, assuming, because they're open to the fact that it could be metaphorical, even though they don't assign, like, they're not telling you exactly what it represents, other than the fact to say that there was a problem, God set things up perfectly, and somehow sin entered the equation, and therefore God had to take these radical steps to come up with a plan for redemption to glorify himself, because he was going to create the problem, which is sin,
Oh,
deviation from his
James,
nature.
you're making way too many problems in that.
Mm,
It's just when humans went from hunter-gatherer culture to an agrarian culture where you have some farms and some wildlife, that's what the story of the Garden of Eden is about. It's pretty simple.
well, the story
It's
comes
really
from
in the text.
it comes from
It's
the
plain.
Enuma Elish, I
Mm.
believe.
Yes,
Uh,
and and that comes from an even older story that we don't have.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I think religion dates back to at least 40,000 BC.
Yes, around that time.
But
That's
we don't
yeah.
have good records beyond 10,000
Right.
BC.
Right.
But
No, but
What's funny is I've been having, I had this same argument, debate that we're talking about right now with my second Jehovah's Witness, who's called me on the phone
Dun, dun, dun.
to tell me to go to jw.org. And the second one, this was a man this time. I know I told you guys this before. The first one was a woman, but both these people had to be 70 plus years old, maybe 70 or 80, and these are volunteers now working for jw.org to tell people to go to jw.org. And what it's telling me is, and I went to their
I feel like
site.
their marketing team's at least working.
They're fully marketing to me, and I did go to their site because I wanted to because I promised this guy I would after I talked to him. And it's so interesting to see what they're coming on with their site about COVID and what
right,
COVID means, and the end, the end of the
they're
world
always
is.
trying to fit it into the end
Yes,
time
yes, they're
scenario.
always
Yeah, always.
exactly. They're trying to find it, and it's kind of sad to me because these people honestly are afraid of me dying and going to hell. And so
Right.
that's why they're calling people. And it's super interesting because obviously if you know the history about JWs, they probably weren't even allowed to go to the internet till like 5 years ago or something,
Yeah, but they're probably losing the long game, so they're like, "Damn
Well,
it!" and they're putting it
yeah,
out
they
there.
are. They're losing the long game, but they're trying to catch back up to it through the internet, and they're using super old people to try to market it to you. And before,
Yeah.
I owned a house like 10 years ago, and they like maybe one time JW showed up in my house, and when I told them I was an atheist, I was blackballed. Like they never showed up in my house ever again. Now I'm getting calls,
Oh,
and
no problem.
yeah.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
I know. I was gonna say, Jehovah's Witnesses, feel free to both call
You want
by
to blackball
phone
me?
Yeah,
and feel free to come on the show anytime,
yeah,
all time.
anytime. And so this is the second person, and both of these people have engaged with me for over an hour on the phone, and probably because they're in their 70s and not a lot of people, they don't get to communicate it. Probably a lot of people hang up on them, right when they call. What was super interesting to me, and I don't know a lot about JWs, but they are adamant about the flood story, bro. They stick on that story. They both these people were like, when I said, you know what, science, geology disproves a worldwide flood. There's not enough H2O molecules in the system of our
We don't
planet.
even need to take. I want
Yeah,
to know
yeah.
what is the connection between it raining and the animals becoming vegetarians. That will never not be funny because I
Yeah.
always used to think it came from Not that there is any logic to any of the stories, but you would have thought that came from the Adam and Eve story. But no, it's like it rained outside. It rained so hard that the animals stopped being vegetarians.
Well,
and
Yeah. I mean, this is just one. This is one thing that I just can't get over is that they just have not put some critical thought into the Noah story. And what's, the first time the older woman called me, I was very polite. I didn't. The second time when this guy called me, I was polite for about 10 minutes, and not even 10 minutes. He was basically like, "Hey, I've come to give you a message. He goes, I'm not a telemarketer," right up front. "I'm not a telemarketer. I'm from Jehovah's Witness. You should go to jw.org. Yeah. You should go to jw.org and check out our site. And I'm here to save you." And I said, "You know what?" I said, his name was Alvin. I said, "Alvin, I'm glad you called, because I'm here to save you, because I'm also worried about people like you who belong to a cult called the Jehovah's Witnesses." And I thought I was going to get hung up because I used the C word right there. I honestly thought he just breezed past it. He was
they probably used to it.
He breezed past it, and he was like, "Well, why do you say that?" And I said, "Because you have because your organization has a lot of damaging things. You have a group of like 12 men who control this organization, and they're taking advantage of you." And he's like, "Can you give me an example?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can't go get a blood transfusion even in medical necessity." And he's like, "Yeah, that's kind of true." And I go, and I said, don't get me wrong, and you correct me. I said, "But don't you guys like discourage Jehovah's Witnesses from getting secondary education, like going to college?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's true, but that's because there's no point to going to that, because it's fruitless. Like, your goal should be
The
with the
end
Bible."
times.
Yeah,
The
like
end
your goal
times.
should be with the Bible and end times. And then later on in the conversation, when we started talking about the flood, I revolved back to that. And I was like, "Alvin, if you had secondary education, you would not believe in the flood story."
Well, there you go. Maybe that's one reason they don't want them to get it, because
Well, for sure.
they don't want people asking too many questions.
For sure.
And so, yeah, just wanted to ask. Man Bear Pig says, "What's the panel's opinion on Galatians 1 to 18 to 19?
And
James, brother of the Lord."
And they spent a lot of time on that in the debate, and that was a big thing. And as Dr. Carrier pointed out, if Paul hadn't made that statement before, that all believers are brothers of the Lord, then it'd be no question it must be talking about a biological brother. Right. But since Paul has made that statement before, it leaves an open question as to, is he talking about a biological brother, just a brother in Christ, just a fellow believer? Right. I don't know.
There's
obviously,
there's also a genetic problem, right? Joseph isn't the father of Jesus. God is, right?
Right. I guess it would be a son of Mary.
If you're a Catholic, Mary is a virgin through all her life. So she didn't have any children.
The apologetic to that is that sometimes at that time cousins would be considered brothers, so it could be a cousin, but
okay, but then Richard Carrier wins because he's not the brother of Jesus. He's
but I mean, but still, if there was an actual cousin, that means
if there was a family member of it, then it does lend evidence that there was.
Right. No, because if I say my brother met you last night, and then we meet tomorrow, and you say, "Hey, is that guy your brother?" And I say, "No, it's just some strange cousin. I don't know him."
Yeah, but there's
you exist, right?
Yeah, it says you exist, though. I mean, it still says that, like, you are a family.
People that don't exist don't have families.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
but again, that's just based on we agree that Mary and Joseph exist.
Well,
Well, no, I mean, you would still.
if Jesus didn't
If you're a
exist, I would.
cousin, if you're a cousin, you're a cousin of that person who exists. So, but I'm not. I mean, I would. I don't say I disagree or agree with Carrier.
No. We don't agree on that at all, because he could be a cousin of any of Joseph's children.
Not if he says
But,
of Jesus, though.
but in the mythicist position, I would assume that there would be no Joseph either. That would kind of be part and parcel of it. That Mary and Joseph would be mythical also, and yeah.
Yeah, because what's the chance?
If they existed, I think that, if not guaranteed, but it implies that there's a real Jesus. As Pat said, it is the best evidence there is for a historical Jesus would be that connection to a family.
Yeah, because what is Mary and Joseph going around everywhere, but they just decided not to have sex with each other? Come on.
And according to the Catholic tradition, yes, that Joseph would have just been like a guardian, like almost like a eunuch, just protecting her virtue.
He would
For
also
what?
be
He didn't
like
know. He didn't know she'd be
35,
impregnated.
and she would be like 12. So
She would be young, anywhere between 12 and 15, probably, but it doesn't say specifically. But that would be the normal custom at the time.
Yeah.
And so, gonna bring up 2 comments. Spiritual, what is up? And it's just asking where I stand. I think I'm with a lot of these guys. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that
the quintessential moderate.
I know I can't help myself, but it seems that there is a lot of legend elements. There's a lot of mythology going on here. There may have been a real person at the center of the story. Maybe many of them, maybe one. I, however, am sure that it would be more of a John Smith situation if we were to break it down into who he was as an actual person. Like, I do not believe that anyone perfect has ever existed. And so if it's not a perfect person who was not born a virgin, who did not resurrect from the dead, are we talking about Jesus?
Yeah.
Or Bob Barker.
And then one last thing I do want to bring up, and I'm also open to having my mind changed into either direction. But Pat says, and keep on tagging all James W. and myself in comments at Amy Newman. By the way, Paul never speaks about Mary as a virgin or anything regarding his family.
True.
And other than James, is silent on the issue. The virgin birth originates in the Gospels.
Interesting.
Which were written after Paul's writings.
Yep.
around 70.
Well,
80.
The earliest estimate for Mark is, I believe, 60, but I think that's getting pushed closer to 70.
It has to be after the temple, right? It has
that's widely assumed,
70,
yeah.
Like, from what I understand, but I'm no expert.
I believe 60 is the absolute youngest it could be, but it is.
Yeah, I thought it was 60 AD through like 150.
And that would be Mark.
All the four books. All the four books was like 60 through 150.
Mark is the first one, and the earliest date for that would be 60 AD. But the other books are retellings and reshufflings of Mark.
Right.
I believe Matthew.
Yes. That's also a huge problem, because what is it, like 93% of Mark is in Matthew?
Right. It's
That's
different
a
authors putting their own
huge
spin on it.
percentage. That's like if
It's
93% of your next report was written by someone else,
right.
then it wasn't really you who was writing it.
Now, if all four of the Gospels were written right around the same time, it would lend more credence to their credibility. I guess it
I
would
agree.
because
To me,
then
if it was all in 80, like
well,
80,
it would lend
80,
credence to
I
their
know
credibility
they both sound the same, but
because
in the
then they
year
couldn't have
81,
copied off of each
80,
other.
Right.
then it would be a lot better. But they're all like soldiers just said. It's almost what?
Yeah, I think it's like 60 to 150 AD, right? Between
Yeah,
the four.
so that's almost 100 years, 90 years
Yeah.
between them.
So the earlier ones they had time to come out and circulate, and then later authors picked up those, read them, and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm gonna try it, take a crack at this one."
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with Islam, which is
Ooh.
basically a collection of
We got Pat here,
the
Amy.
Old Testament and local other texts that were going on at the same time. I don't want to say Islam is a direct ripoff of the Old Testament, but it steals a lot from the Old Testament. What happened?
Here.
And all right. Looks like Pat was backstage for a second.
Come back, Pat.
Ready. But we are sending love to the internet sphere out there. We are Midnight Ranting on Did Jesus Exist?
So,
Oof.
Amy, I have a quick question.
I may have a quick answer. We'll see.
What did you think about the debate con debate about transgenders with
Here's Pat.
some guy sitting next to you basically saying that you had a mental issue or a delusion.
I thought that was a good panel. I was very happy.
I mean, it was a great panel, but I mean, great. That guy's got balls, right?
Well,
so does she.
That guy has some serious balls.
He does, but
he does take chutzpah.
He has. So, I mean, that's his honest convictions. I mean, you got to give him that, but
he wasn't out bullshitting.
I honestly, like I said, I thought it was a constructive dialogue. As James knows, as I think anyone on this channel knows, we're kind of pulled towards views that disagree with our own. And I honestly think it's the only way that you can change someone's mind sometimes is looking them in the face and saying,
I think you did great. I think you did great.
Well, thank you so very much.
You were like, I'm freaking way more happy. And you said, I don't have dysphoria anymore, which I thought was like, that was the freaking best answer you could.
And it's not hurting anybody else. So, why would anybody care?
Like you literally said, I had dysphoria before I changed. And that was just freaking phenomenal. I have to give you props for that.
Well, thank you. And I mean, it does. I think the word I use, just using their language, is it transcends being biological or transgenders. We just want to be happy with who we look at in the mirror.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And all right. Speaking of looking in the mirror and being gorgeous, we are going to bring the one and only Pat Lowinger on. It's time to actually get an academic perspective instead of the bunch of skeptic schmucks who I love and have been on the panel
I'm one of them.
Far, including myself. But we got Pat on here. Pat,
Welcome
I hope
back,
you are having a fantastic night We are Midnight Ranting on Did Jesus Exist, the debate, or just the topic itself?
Well, thanks for having me on. I really don't think it's that important of a question when we really get down to it. The historicity and mythicist arguments, while entertaining, as long as you're not trying to present a divine Jesus who did as was portrayed in the gospel accounts, I don't see it as being that necessary of a question to actually spend as much time as we tend to do on it. But that being said, I think it's an interesting question given the actual lack of evidence we have concerning the topic.
Well, I think it's just that the Christianity and the Jesus, they're just so pervasive in our culture that it's so, if it's complete myth, then what does that say about society and our culture, that what we've built on, this whole foundation has been on a myth the whole time.
Yeah, but the first 5 years of your life is built on a myth if you believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah, but you grow out of that.
Yeah.
We've never been able to break away from this Jesus myth.
Some of us have. Some of us have.
I mean, as a society as a whole,
right.
I never believed in Santa Claus.
I definitely did, but I was the first kid on my block to tell all the rest of the kids that Santa Claus didn't exist.
I can imagine that, Soldier. I can imagine that. Ruining everybody's fun.
I was, and I literally, I remember this day because my mom was furious with me because she had parents from 5 different parents come over and chastise her because I was the first person on my block to tell all the kids Santa Claus doesn't exist.
In other words, there was a pattern. You were going to become an atheist.
I came from a
it
very
took 40
poor
years, it
family.
took 40 years more.
I came from a very poor family, so it was very important to know that the gift came from your parents or your relatives.
Yeah. Nice.
There was no Santa Claus involved.
Yeah. You figure that out pretty quickly when you realize that, hey, how come Santa Claus gives lots nicer stuff to the rich kid, the kids with rich parents, and these kids are dipshits, but the lower end kids, they get, much less in comparison, but they're actually a lot better people. Go figure, huh?
It's like a science experiment.
Yeah. Dipshit gets a brand new BMW for Christmas or whatever.
So, but to answer Pat, I do think Dr. Carrier has a good response for that, in the fact that it would be great to know historically if it's true or not, or just a myth. I think that people in Greece probably thought that their gods were historically true for a long period of time. And I think that's probably true about the Vikings. I think that's probably true about Native Americans. It's definitely true with Hinduism.
I think Pat is coming
now.
back.
Okay.
I think he's having connection issues, Amy.
Yeah. I'm just saying that there are probably, there are definitely religions right now that people think their gods are historically true. And so there is some value to the fact of debunking whether Jesus was an actual person or was a myth. I think there is value to that. Like I said before, I'm still leaning on the probably a historical person, not God.
I think it's valuable to at least pose the question, because it does make Christians at least have to go out and find information that I think they've taken for granted their entire lives.
True.
I think if you asked, I think probably 90% of Christians, if you asked them who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they would say, oh, Matthew, Mark,
Matthew,
Luke, and
Mark, and Luke,
John.
John. Yep.
Yeah, when you tell them actually no, they didn't
No,
write it. It was written by anonymous authors,
No,
and it was
wrong.
written
You're wrong about that. You're wrong about that. Not they don't think it's anonymous authors, but they don't think it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
I disagree.
I would think most Christians would.
Yep.
Think that.
Maybe in America, but not.
Yeah, in America.
Well, that's all we have to base our information on.
But not over here in Europe.
I actually asked that question.
That's not.
Okay.
They don't think because they are.
Hey,
no, in America,
they think it's connected to the first Catholic Church.
Not only will Christians in America say that it's Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John, but they believe that Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John were actual disciples of Christ.
The eyewitnesses, the apostles.
Yep, that they lived at the same time as Jesus.
And
I've asked many
Europe
Christians
don't believe that. Christians in Europe don't believe that.
I'll tell you why that happens, especially probably with Americans, but it's because we like to smush history into a single subject. And so something that happened 200 years ago is the equivalent of something that happened 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Hey, Regos.
What's up, Regos? Sending love to everybody out there. I see. Sending love to both Jenna. Sending love to Peter. Peter says, I thought you knew this. There's much historical evidence for Jesus. He was sadly a very misunderstood stand-up comedian from the first century. I knew it.
Not historical, hysterical.
Oh, hysterical. I'm sorry. I fill in the bro.
Killed it, Newman.
Look, it's like I had one job. Nonetheless, we are Midnight Ranting on Did Jesus Exist? We're going to be doing so for like another 30 so minutes before we go into outros. I will say, theists, creationists. I know Gizmo's saying the same thing. Come one, come all. We are just looking for perspectives. Tell us why we're wrong.
All right.
Catholic traditionalist. I'm calling on you right now.
Oh no, please, no, not that.
Praise,
but that's
Loki,
where
anybody.
in Europe the authors of the Gospels come from. They are believed to be church fathers from around 200-300.
They're written before that, but
not in in the Catholic tradition.
Wow.
They are believed to be church fathers, like in the with robes and all.
So is it?
No.
Pat's buddy St. Augustine writing them, huh?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Probably one of the biggest corruptors of quite a few of our important textual sources, though, is, although we can look at Augustine, but probably was Eusebius. Eusebius is often pointed to by historians for very similarities between his writing style and interpolations that we detect, and so many people point him to the source of a lot of textual corruption. So it would make sense because he was a big cheerleader for Christianity in the early 4th century. So.
Like European Christians would never say the eyewitness thing. That's such an American thing.
Well,
nobody in Europe would say that the authors ever talked to or met an eyewitness. That's such an American thing. That's such an American thing. That's not it's not in Christianity. the authors of the Gospels didn't know the people who met Jesus.
Well, I'm gonna. Again, I don't want to straw man American Christians, but I actually think that might be a little rarer than you think. I think you're looking largely at evangelical Christians, right? But most Americans aren't evangelicals. I think if you ask most people that are Christians in the United States, are going to say, yeah, the Gospels are written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
But most of them will know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, quote unquote, weren't disciples of Jesus. I mean, most people, the average Christian who's not a fundamentalist or an evangelical.
No. You're turning it around. I didn't say. No. You're turning it around.
In what way?
I'm saying in Europe, the fundamentalists believe that the Gospels were written in the 2nd or 3rd century.
I think.
So what you're saying is not even on point. That's not.
Actually, I made my own point. I mean, I was talking about fundamentalists in the United States. I think I actually prefaced it with that. But
but I didn't attack fundamentalists in the United States.
He's just saying what they think over here.
Right. I'm just explaining the difference between the level of religious knowledge as far as like authorship and I would say chronology, right? They tend to, it's really only in the evangelical community in the United States that we have kind of this disconnect between what I consider scholarship, but I use that term in air quotes very, very liberally. Yeah. Right. And some I mean, you ask the average moderately informed non-evangelical Christian in the United States, they're going to have a fair understanding regarding the authorship of most of the major books within a theological framework, but not necessarily that has to be authoritative, non-inerrant, or the inerrant quality that some communities in the United States approach the New Testament at. But I do think that evangelicals and fundamentalists in the United States really give the rest of Christians in the United States a really bad name as far as oversimplifying their knowledge. The average Catholic in the United States knows that that at least a couple of the books of the new, like most Catholics know that Paul didn't write Hebrews because you're actually taught that in catechism, right? So
no, and I agree that I agree. Most Catholics know that Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John weren't actual disciples, but I've talked to many Christians, not Catholics, who would say Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John were either disciples or lived and were eyewitnesses of Jesus' resurrection.
I would agree, and I think you start seeing that more in like the evangelical and that fundamentalist side of religiosity in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to give hate here, but I think you're wrong there, Pat. I think it's pervasive.
Well, okay. He's entitled to his opinion.
Yeah.
And I am just hoping that Christianity continues to wane, which I think that it is doing. It is becoming harder and harder to PR to youngins with access to the internet who are like, I know that Santa Claus thing was not real, but it turns out this whole Jesus thing might not be so real.
Yeah, again, I have to push back on that, Amy, and say that obviously church provides a huge community experience for people who don't otherwise have a community experience. They get to go see their community once a week.
But wait, what are you pushing back on?
Well, I'm just pushing back on the fact that people would give up on the belief in God when they would rather just be delusioned by it and still have the community
But see,
experience.
I think that statistically, I
There
would show
church
that it's
attending
going
out.
down.
Church attendance is down.
No, I mean, true. Yeah, true. Whether it's beneficial for them or not, though, is, I think. I mean, it's always better to know the truth, right? But I mean, even myself as an atheist, I can tell you, I wish I still had my friends that I had when I was going to church. And part of the reason I don't have those friends anymore is because I don't go to church or I don't believe in God. So I'm not saying that's a substitute. I'm not saying I'm going to go back to believing in God because I need those friends. Obviously, the truth is more important.
But you could just call them.
No, it's not that easy. It's not that easy.
Well, it's the disfellowship and the disconnect, right? I think that's what you're getting.
Well,
exactly.
And sure, but I would also then reroute that back to who. If you can't contact them, then whose fault is that?
No, but I mean,
the religion.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that there needs to be a replacement for that community.
Sure.
There is a cost associated with leaving religion. There is a cost.
But I would agree. I actually would agree with you. I think you need to have a replacement for that community. And to use a word from Oz, I think we can do it better.
It's tough though, because
it is.
Are you creating something that's a quasi-religion? I mean, then the thing is that the only thing that unifies us is that we don't believe in a God.
Right.
I mean, I think you can find commonalities other than that, but there's nothing universal other than that.
We don't have to replace religion. We're just simply finding out the community aspect. Because I would say a religion has to do with dealing with supernatural elements or dealing with
the fear of death, ultimately.
See, it's dealing with things past death, because I would say community can help us deal with death, but religion will oftentimes give you ways out of death, which you don't think we can offer.
Exactly. It also gives you some really cool music too, if you're in some of those Pentecostal churches or those Foursquare churches.
And so I agree.
That was always the worst part for me.
I agree that you can get music, that you could get art and all this, but it's funny enough, I was listening to Hitchens today, and he had the same quandary for anything like this, which was just name something that you could get from religion that we couldn't get somewhere else. He was really asking about morality, but I would say it really applies to culture in general.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I think Sean McDowell, you know who Sean McDowell is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think his most recent video was him interviewing someone that basically said, "Oh, music and art proves there's God." And I'm like, what? Like, music's more special than language? Really? I mean, music is intuitive that there must be a God. Come on.
Yeah, they're grasping for straws at that point.
They're grasping.
I will say one thing that religion has attached to it as a social constraint mechanism is, the moral mandate. The fact that in a secular society, everything in our systems are nuanced and subject to situational ethics, right? Where when you come from a system that has a moral mandate, the absolute nature of that as a social mechanism for control, it gravitates a lot of people towards it, right? Because the certitude rather than the nuance, right? But
it doesn't work if you read the book.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I was gonna say. I
they always break the rules in the book.
That's what I was going to say.
The Old Testament?
I totally disagree with that because if you read the Bible, and not even if you know anything about the Bible, and you're like a modern Christian who totally just rejects the Old Testament altogether and all the Leviticus laws, you reject all of that.
But then
you still have your own cherry picking of morality. You still have that, even with Christianity's morality of love your neighbor and love your enemies and all of that.
You do have a basis for it.
Barely, though. It's barely a basis that it's not really truly affecting your moral compass. And the evolution of morality within religion happens with society. It moves with society. It lags behind society, but it moves with society ultimately.
But there is a power in saying that, certain things are right because God says so. You can't question it because God said so. Whether it's true or not, there is, I think, some utility in that because it's arbitrary. You can't question it, and that could lead to a certain level of stability in society, even though
did you pick
I think
let me give you
then I'll go stone.
The trade-off is not worth it. But
let me give you a great example of this in America. I have to preface that most modern Christians who feel themselves as progressive are totally okay with gay marriage now. Totally okay with it. Even though the Bible supposedly says, it's against gay marriage, but most modern Christians in America now are okay with that if they're progressive.
The religion evolved.
So for me, the morality of the Bible statement is crap. It's a crap statement.
But actually, you're actually proving my point without knowing it. The moral pronouncement is shifted. So in these religious systems, the moral pronouncement is now that homosexuality is okay because they've quote mined or theologically mined their book to establish a new theological and thus moral mandate. That's what religion does.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I mean that the
like when you and I are
the authority is coming from the church now in some cases is what you're saying.
And it's a projection of social normalization, right? But it gives for the average person who doesn't want to think about it, like you and me and Amy and James and everybody else, we sit around, we have a discussion on ethics and morality, right? We're going to have nuanced positions based on all of our secular humanism, right? I think most people in the audience are probably secular humanists, right? But other people are going to come in with a moral certitude based on their religious system, right? And you and I don't have certitude; we have nuance. We may have, and I think that makes it kind of difficult to.
But I mean, you're going to ask that person. Is the Bible okay with gay marriage?
Well, and now
they're gonna have a nuance on that. They're gonna have the church that I go to says it's okay.
And then someone else is going to say the church I go to says it's not okay. But they both have moral certitude based on what their churches tell them. Right. The theology
but not necessarily what the Bible tells them.
But Pat, that proves that God is true. If they can both be wrong and right.
I'm not saying it's not schizophrenic. I'm just saying that it's how the moral certitude within a system works, right? A religious system.
Yes, but it's profoundly sick.
I'm not arguing that.
Yeah,
I do think it's it's interesting to see how these systems are changing and adapting to what we see as more inclusive societal norms. But
we must always applaud and hope for more inclusion.
I mean, it's
a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
it is.
It keeps peace alive longer.
I hope. I hope that's why.
Well,
we're
the
doing
future
this.
of it, I think the Christians will be like the Jews and the Muslims will be like the Christians. So
Right.
there are different phases that we'll have to go through because, my mom works on the Sabbath and eats bacon. And so I am hoping that the future of Christianity is not caring about gay marriage and trying to think what else, and then not being a asshole to my trans brothers and sisters. I guess those will be the two things.
And it's going to happen because the religion will evolve to maintain relevancy, because they didn't evolve on gay marriage because they wanted to. They evolved because people were not going to stand for it. The churches would empty out. So when you're not able to pay your bills, your theology evolves pretty damn quick.
Yep.
And it did.
I agree.
Yeah, especially when the purse is on the line, that collection
Right.
plate.
Oh, what? We're going to lose our members. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, the Bible says it's wrong, but who are we to judge? Jesus loves everybody. To each their own. Keep passing the plate around. Keep the money coming in.
And all right, we're going to add in Randolph. He's probably going to be our last person.
That guy?
That guy?
Man,
Randolph? No way.
As I command him, the godfather of atheism. We have about 15 minutes left. So a theist, believer, creationist, if you want to get in, now is the time to do
Randolph's
so.
a theist.
Because we are talking, did Jesus exist? And we're Midnight Ranting. Randolph Richardson, I hope you are doing fabulously and fantastically as always. And what are your thoughts about either the debate or just the topic itself? What do you think? Did Jesus exist?
Hey, Randolph.
Hello, everyone. I think the topic of did Jesus exist as a question is the problem that I have is that as I understand it, the scriptures were written after his death and quite a significant amount of time afterward. And what seems to make sense to me is that there were probably a number of different people and changes to the storylines as well over time, but they took a number of different people and took different attributes and put them into this one person and called him Jesus, and or maybe one of them was called Jesus and used that. It may not have just been one person, right? So that seems to me more plausible than the idea of it just being one person who was perfectly remembered for 25 to 100 or 200 years, depending on which school of thought you're in, of when the scriptures about him were written after his death. Because when people pass on stories over time, even the course of a week, the story can change a bit. 25 years minimum would be the smallest, shortest amount of time I've heard. It seems like an awfully long time for people to practice the oral tradition of continually telling the same story over and over again, because each person who relays the story tells it in their own style, and that can sometimes have an effect on some of the information in the story. And in elementary school, I remember we played Chinese whispers, also known as telephone in North America. 30 kids sitting around in a circle, and one student would be randomly selected to come up with something or read off a piece of paper, whisper it to the person next to them, and then it goes from one person to the next until it comes to the one sitting beside them. And then that person would say what message came through, and it was rarely accurate. And sometimes it had changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I was one of those kids who sometimes would purposely change the message. And
I have no trouble believing that, Randolph.
Yeah. And if somebody
from the start,
and if people are going to believe that there were no jokers in the minimum 25 years of oral storytelling, and somebody wanting to add some humor into it to make it more entertaining, perhaps, that could have made some kind of change, even if they didn't have an intention to change it too much. I think there's a lot of things that need to be considered. But anyway, I'm interested in what other people think
It's
of this.
also why I dislike fundamentalism. Because once you start it's why I dislike fundamentalism. Because once you start writing it down, first of all, you've made so many oral jokes that I just need to just throw that out there. Nonetheless,
joke, interesting choice of words. Okay.
That you did. Yes. But
most jokes are oral.
Oh my. I like every sentence that has been coming out of our mouths, including that one. But
words. Okay.
When it was oral tradition, it probably ebbed and flowed, and you could change something. You didn't like something, you could just take it out. Now we have to go through the censuses that have just list after list of people. We have to listen.
They were edited too.
You have to take everything, and you can't change it. And when it says stone gays, you can't mean getting a bunch of gays really stoned. And so you can't, in its literalism, in this purity test, you kind of make it crazy and make these fundamentalists.
A lot of times what would happen, you'd have various authors writing, and each one would have their own take on it, and things would get put in the footnotes, and then somebody coming by later to translate it would just translate it all, including the footnotes, and then somebody else translating another copy, and then they'd have to reconcile the two, and it was just a mess.
And Amy, fundamentalism to me is really the borderline of, is this person making money off of their grift, or do they really believe in this freaking insane crap? I mean, we're in 2022 now, and you really still believe there's a worldwide flood? You really still believe the Earth is only 6,000 years old? Really? Like, where the fuck where have you been living?
Is this Will talking or somebody else?
On the Earth that are older than 6,000 years.
That there are.
Is that Will talking or somebody else?
And that is Soldier of Science.
Hey, Randolph. Yeah. Hey, Randolph.
I am sending love to everyone out there on the interwebs.
You need an avatar.
I know. Sorry.
Gonna bring up some comments.
I do. It's Amy's fault. I normally do.
It happens every once in a while. From Peter, it all went horribly wrong when a monk translated Jesus' skit about feeding the 5,000 with loads of fishes. Dumbasses read loaves instead of loads. Oh my. Makes sense. Look, sometimes you gotta do those magic tricks, and I just want to say that Jesus, my yoga teacher, has taught me many a magic trick.
It was actually loaf.
How many loaves did he give you, Amy?
It was loaves of bread and fishes.
Now, was the wine that Jesus created from water, was it 100 proof?
Yes. Great alcohol.
Infinite proof.
The best wine.
I would say if I was Jesus, I would just open a wine factory at that point, or just open like a
bordello,
wine and
Concord grape all the way, baby.
But that story is an act, right? It's not in the actual Gospels. I'm trying to remember.
I'd have to double check that. I don't think so, but.
Says Chris Hedges and Alan D. Button had an interesting conversation about what atheists can learn from religion in regards to what all you're discussing about atheist community. And exactly, I think what we could do is, I think a lot of the good in religion has a double-edged sword. And so I think what the non-believer community can offer is that we can take away, we can have a community without saying you have to be in here, or we're going to, if you disagree with anything we say, we're going to kick you out. We can help the homeless without tying anything to the sandwich. We could actually just be good for the sake of being good. And so I think that we clearly there are reasons why we as humans have done all of these religious activities, why we work together in groups to get bigger tasks done. I think we can do it, and we will, and we should.
Amy, you sound like you're a bit distracted since I put up these pictures of the Concord grape.
So hold on. You're gonna make me do it. You're gonna make me do it.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Hey, I will say, I do love a good grape juice. I love it better than a wine, but I like wine. Wine is good too.
Isn't wine just grape juice?
Well, it's fermented. I will take. I actually am hooked on the white stuff. I've always been big on sugar.
Oh man, Vincendale is one of the best wines ever.
This one's my favorite, but I don't like alcohol or liquors very much.
I do. I don't like the taste of alcohol, but I'm a social drinker, so it's always a nice way to meet people.
So Amy, I just have to tack on to that.
Okay, tack on to it, baby.
I have to tack on to your community argument.
That's my community.
I know. I have to do it. That first of all, churches here have a huge advantage of being, tax-free, basically. They're nonprofits. They're tax-free. Yeah, tax exempt. They make tons of money off of fraud, basically. Of fraud.
Selling that invisible product.
Like you literally, it should be, we should enforce fraud rules, right? You cannot prove that you're going to heaven with a belief system. You can't prove that. Why do you get tax exempt status for being able to have fraud?
Well, I would like,
it's freedom of religion. It's a religious belief. I mean, people are allowed to believe crazy things.
Yeah, but it's fraud.
It doesn't have
it's
to
fraud.
be tax exempt.
It's fraud.
Why is it tax exempt?
And I would at least say they should be able to prove that they are marginally doing something
you
good.
should,
I'm okay with
like any product.
I want freedom
any
of
product,
religion.
you should prove the claim. And if you can't prove the claim,
but it's a religion. Religion can't prove any of its claims, though.
That's true.
Exactly.
Then you walk into forced atheism, and we're not for forced atheism because that doesn't work.
Now, in answer to the question about why it's tax exempt,
you can believe at home.
There is a saying that goes like this.
And it goes like this.
What is the difference between a cult and a religion? Tax exempt status. But seriously, though, I think they have a pretty powerful lobby because there's so many of them.
Absolutely.
And that's you had a lot of politicians who are also part of religion, and they'd get votes, and they, of course, they have no interest in getting rid of
Israel and Saudi Arabia with munitions.
I think it's more just the First Amendment, the separation of church and state, that you don't want the state having any affairs to do with religion. So by taxing them, then it just opens up a can of worms.
Well, that's an American question here in Canada.
It is an American thing, yeah.
Yeah, but here in Canada, it's structured quite differently, and that's not a concern at all. We just don't. We just have the tax exempt status because of what I stated. There's an interest by politicians to keep it there because if any politician gets rid of it, they're afraid that it's going to be political suicide for them because they'll lose a lot of votes from religious people.
That's true here. That's true here too. I mean, the evangelists in America completely support Israel. So you get defense.
I mean,
you get defense dollars going to Israel and simultaneously Saudi Arabia, which is interesting. So yeah, I mean, our evangelicals keep the whole system alive, and it's because of fraud. It's because of fraud, and they should treat it more like a consumer. Like,
they fund
it's
two
a
enemies. They basically fund enemies on both sides of a war so they can keep selling arms. And stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
it's horrible. But let me respond to the community aspect. I think that,
And actually, so
and I have one response I want to make as well.
So respond to the community
then we'll go
soldier,
outro.
and then Randolph, make your final point. But then that sounds good. But then after that point, tell me, because you are going to roll into our outros where you're going to start us off.
Okay. So no, I'll just let Randolph go in his outro, and I'll include mine in the outro.
You'll make it in your outro? Okay, thank you, Soldier.
Okay, I'll just quickly make a point. There's somebody raised something earlier about that I wanted to address, was about how we can learn so much from religion. I think this is, to me, a pretty vacuous statement, because there's things to be learned from all sorts of different traditions and stories and things that people have written in the past and history and whatnot. I don't see religion as being any more important than these other things. I don't see a point in putting it up on a pedestal and say, oh, you can learn something special from this. I can learn more from the Lord of the Rings books in certain respects. I can.
Amen.
Yeah, so it's just I don't like giving it special treatment, because I don't think it deserves it. It's just popular is all. What about learning from the scriptures for other religions? You know, are we just putting a particular one on the pedestal here? No, we need to treat them like any other kind of book that we can get some ideas from, I think.
Woohoo! And all right, thank you so very much, Randolph Richardson. In fact, thank you so very much to our entire panel. We are about to move into our outros, as we have been midnight ranting on Did Jesus Exist? Want to send love into the internet sphere, the entire chat, as we bring in, I guess it is the mimes, the clown mimes. But we are sending. What's that?
They have so much to say.
They have so much to say, if you really think about it. And we're sending love. Midnight Ranting. We're handing it off to Randolph Richardson. Woohoo! Lovely to have you here, as always, Randolph. We have been asking ourselves, did Jesus exist? Talking about both the debate with Richard Carrier, which was fantastic, and as well as the subject itself, with some theology mixed in. Where can people find you? And of course, what are your final thoughts on the subject?
Well, people can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Randolph828. That's RANDOLF 828. My YouTube channel address is youtube.com/Randolph Richardson. And this Sunday at 8 o'clock Pacific time in the morning, or 10 o'clock Central time, or 11 o'clock Eastern time, I'm probably going to be hosting a live stream. And what's happening is I'll be on a Discord stage on a panel with 3 or 4 or 5 others who are quite well versed in philosophy. I'm a mere beginner, but the topic is going to be, they'll be inviting people to try to convince us on the panel that a god or a goddess exists. So it should be kind of an interesting one, and I look forward to learning as much as I can from this. The original topic was going to be convince us that a god exists, and I suggested adding in a goddess as well.
I'm sure you did, Randolph.
There's
Sure
another option. Why not? It's it can't make things any more difficult for us. But
Randolph, we need to be egalitarian in our superstitions, our disbelief of superstition.
Yeah, but I put it in there for fun, and everybody agreed right away. They all seem to like the idea. So I'm looking forward to I'll have the chat going so that people can put comments as we go. But I'm mostly not going to be watching it because I'll be on the stage. But well, hopefully it goes really well, and probably it'll be about 2 to 3 hours in total. And it's being promoted all over the place. These people organizing it have a reputation for bringing in quite a lot of people into the audience. So that's it's all mainly on Discord. But for those who don't have access to Discord, I got permission from them to stream it live on my YouTube channel so that more people can see it as well. And so thank you for hosting this, Amy. And thank you to everyone in the audience. And it was
Thank you, Randolph.
Great to see everybody here. Yeah, thanks, James and Amy. Appreciate you both.
Lovely having you on, as always, the godfather of atheism, Randolph with an F.
Don't piss off the godfather.
That's right. And all right, moving right down the line, Pat, the actual archaeologist of the night. It is always fantastic to have you on, and we have been midnight ranting on did Jesus exist? The debate, the topic itself. Where can people find you? And of course, what are your final thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts is, as far as the existence of Jesus, I really don't care. I wake up in the morning pretty much not caring about it. I go to bed not really caring about it. If I'm asked, I'll, I survey some literature and form an opinion, but my life isn't dependent upon it one way or another. You can find me on YouTube. I co-host a show with Biddy Buddha on Biddy Buddha's YouTube channel, which is awesome. She's has an awesome channel, and we're getting some new content on there, which should be really good. Yeah, we enjoy it. We're going to be now scheduled Monday nights, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you can catch us, it's a regular show. We're doing tomorrow night. We're doing a debate on the channel with his name's Bushman. I really don't know. He had a recent debate on Tang against hyperhumanity, which turned into a pretty big dumpster fire.
And what's the topic?
He's going to explain to Biddy why she's wrong in her deconversion, I guess.
Hey, that's like the classic topic. I wish both of them luck.
Yeah, I
great. Be a theme lately.
Yeah,
she'll be a Christian before the night is over.
That's the claim. And I just want to kind of in my outro, I just want to say one thing. Like when it obviously today, sitting around in 2022, the issue with churches and tax exempt status can be really hard for particularly myself and other people to really fathom, right? But when we actually wonder, when did this happen in the United States? Really, tax exempt status was something that existed, but was then codified in the 1890s when it was realized that there weren't very good, particularly in rural areas, there weren't good social institutions for, as a social safety net. And for a long time, churches acted in that manner, right? At the community level. And by the I can't remember if it's 1910 or 1920, but sometime between that area, it was nationally codified into federal law and state law as well, that you can't tax churches because they're supposed to be doing more good in the community with the money they get. Basically, that it's generally considered they give more back than they take in. Well, we know that not to be true because we've had advancements in social systems. Again, the 30s and the 40s in the United States obviously proved that system was non-sufficient during the Great Depression, and we had to actually have a country form its own social institutions now. And there are a few churches out there that do good work, right? Sure. But ultimately, they're a legacy that many of them don't deserve the status and the benefit of the doubt that that small percentages that's still deserving of it actually get. There are a few organizations under religious umbrella who make no mandate on religion, do a lot of good work, are very efficient in their charity, but they're the exception of the rule now, not the rule itself. And I do think it's time for the United States to re-examine the tax-exempt standards of churches who can't demonstrate that they're actually doing more good with the money as any nonprofit does, right?
Well
so
said.
that's it.
Well said.
And you guys take care, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
There's
that was
pressure
awesome.
against tax-exempt status here in
Thank you
Canada
so
growing.
very much, Pat. And go check out Biddy Buddha's channel.
I just added it. I just added it. Yep.
Do fantastic, fabulous, and if I dare say so, intellectual content. Woohoo! And all
You don't
right,
want to be the
I'm
last
excited.
one to subscribe.
Exactly.
Don't
or
be
to
that
see
guy.
debate
I just
tomorrow.
subbed. I just subbed.
Okay. Somebody else go on so he won't be the last one.
And with that, we're moving right down the list. Sending love to you, Pat, and we're moving on. V'lum. We have been Midnight Ranting on Did Jesus Exist? Oh my. I hope you not only had a good time, but what are your thoughts? Where can people find you on the debate, the topic, or anything that we've been talking about today?
Tacos?
Or tacos.
Well, it seems like we agree, Amy, and we're the only two ones who agree on this, that it's an amalgam of characters. It's not actually one person.
I suggested that as well.
I think it's quite possible.
Okay, so we're in agreement. But that's my position.
All right, team, we came together. Now we attack Thanos.
I think it's an amalgam of characters. It's, of course, it was around there were people, called Messiah who walked the Jewish desert some 2,000 years ago. We know that. It's not a question. It's an answer, actually, to the Jesus question. So, like you said, Amy, they just got smooshed together, all of them. So we don't have one person. So that's my position. Kind of boring.
Woo-hoo. Hey, not only would I never say that, I can just appreciate all these outros being on topic. So can I say anything else but happiness? I cannot. Thank you so very much, love. And I couldn't agree more.
It's Soldier next.
Oh, what were you about to say? He is. We're moving down to Soldier of Science. We have been asking, did Jesus exist? We've been getting spicy in the first century. I hope you had a good time. Where can people find you? And of course, what are your final thoughts on the debate, the topic, or as James said, tacos?
Tacos. Oh no. So, for sure, not for sure. I'm actually really in the middle of the Jesus topic. I'm probably 51-49. I'm 51. Jesus as a person probably existed. 49, maybe he didn't. Maybe he was a myth. So definitely could be swayed either way with evidence. Richard Carrier brings a lot of great hypothesis of why he didn't exist, because there is probably a majority consensus that he did exist. Maybe that's why I lean on the 51. And with that said, I have to respond to some of these guys talking about community and taxes exempt status. I personally think that we've come to a point where churches should be like consumer protection. You should be able to prove your claims, and I recognize why we don't, because of the First Amendment issues, and because we hold belief and faith as high esteem in the United States. We hold the word faith, which basically the only attribute for faith is gullibility, in my opinion. We hold that as much as an attribute as we do the First Amendment, as much as we do any constitutional law. And because we don't want to be communists. So I think that's kind of a flaw in our system, that we basically say, you know what, if you believe this, even if it's not true, we're going to value it. We're going to put the same value on this belief because you believe it. I think that's a big flaw in the U.S. system. And then finally, I will say to community and churches that there is probably a way we can replace churches with secularism and humanity by having community organizations where we come together and we do play music together and we talk about topics about how to make our community better. And maybe there's a way that we can do that without having to give people a false promise that they're going to see their loved ones in heaven after they die. And ultimately, I think that's why people still go to church, is because they are afraid of death and they do want to live forever and they do want to see their family members after they die. And I think that's going to be the hardest hurdle to overcome as secular atheists. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much, Soldier of Science.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
all right, we're going to send love to the entire panel, and we're going to hand the keys over to the co-pilot.
Stage driver.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to take us down. I mean, if you think about it, Gizmo is really the brains of both of us, but when you have
executive producer, at least, right?
Exactly. But we are the meat carcasses. So, James, we have been talking about, did Jesus exist? Some people would even say we were midnight ranting. What are your thoughts? The debate, the topic itself, and of course, tacos.
It was a really good debate, and it was a really good conversation here. I'm glad we got to flush out the issues. Thanks, everybody, for coming on. And we will be back on tomorrow. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, James.
Woo-hoo, that's right. We are going to be back on tomorrow for a double header. It's going to be, I think, in the middle of the day, this one, because it is on should ex-Muslims be harmed? And that's the friendly way of putting it. The answer, no. But we're looking for views from either side. We are like to think of ourselves as, once again, the word egalitarian comes to mind. It doesn't matter what the religious tradition is. It doesn't matter which of the three Abrahamic or plus, depending on your DLCs that you are. It's probably superstition. But hey, we love you, all of our theists.
Need to come up with an acronym
all of our brother. That's
for the
right.
Abrahamic, like JCI plus.
Look, we're trying to get rid of this religion. We're trying to get rid of this religion.
JCI
I view ourselves
plus
as the merchants
community.
of doubt. Exactly. I want to send love out there. I saw people sending, saying the debate and debate con, the panel was fantastic. I will say, I saw some comments giving, I will say, just flattery gets you everywhere. So thank you. All of those out there. Night, ladies and gentlemen.
Amy,
look, when you're good at something, you never work a day in your life, James.
Amy, you were a fantastic host on that, by the way.
Thank you so very much. Hey, it was fun. It was an honor just to help James in all of the modern day debate. We have so many Jameses in my life. It was an honor just to help him moderate, to meet Sideshow Nav and all those who was also a mensch. And all of the debaters that I met there were honestly sweethearts. It might be just that it's harder to be an a-hole when you're like in front of the screen or whatever. But when I was actually shaking hands with everyone, even people that disagreed with me, I had a great time. So as we're talking about community, I'm just sending love to the debate community out there. Da 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 da. And all right, I think with that, I hope that you all had a fun time on this episode of Midnight Ranting. Did Jesus exist? Oh my. Where tonight we had some first century fun. Da da da. But I do want to thank my co-host, James W.
You're welcome, man.
Along with our guest, Soldier, Flum, Pat, and Randolph, as well as the people in chat, our awesome mods who make this stream so great, and lovely viewers like you, who make this channel even possible. If you enjoyed the show, please like, follow, or subscribe. It does help. But then you get access to that bell icon to be hit to all so that you get reminders to join our reminders. That's right, very special. Because hi, interwebs. But after the show, we will be heading over to Skeptic and Ranting Discord server, the link of which is in the description below, along with the debate if you missed it. Or hey, why not leave a comment once the video's done? Lastly, if you'd like to help us make even more content, we offer some unique perks for our supporters by checking out patreon.com/Amy Newman. I am Amy Newman, and we will see you all on the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Mwah.